At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo of the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a big shout out to Facebook subscribers and patrons of the podcast. As always, thank you very, very much. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you, but especially all of you that are here watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. Thank you so very much. We are into February right now, and it is already going fast. There's so much stuff that is going on, whether it be more powerful episodes, amazing stories that are coming out, micro content that I'm creating and putting out there into my social media platforms through the network and everything. Just a lot of storytelling, stuff that I love to do, but also thank you for trusting me with sharing all of your stories, especially for the I Am 911 movement. On Instagram, the handle is I Am 911 Stories. And then if you have any I Am 911 stories that you would like to share, because one of the things that I've been doing is actually recording these stories with my voice, so a voiceover. So we're actually reading them out and putting them out there in that handle there on Instagram, where I want to try to focus and make that the main part of it. They're still going to go out throughout the entire network. However, that account at I Am 911 Stories on Instagram is going to be where most of them come out first. And then, of course, as you know, there's a book that'll be coming out. There's more information on that coming soon. I can't share it all yet, but I will. I will soon. But that's just one of the things that continues to build for the entire I Am 911 movement. And again, I thank you so much for trusting me with sharing your stories. I appreciate it. Along with that, there's more bonus content coming out for subscribers, along with singing badly in my car. So there's a lot of those as well. But as always, you know, we've got speaking engagements at different conferences. The podcast will be there capturing more stories and everything. So keep an eye out. Within the Trenches is coming at you. So I am super excited for my guest today. We were already laughing and joking right before we started recording, and I'm ready to have some fun. This is going to be good. We're going to learn a lot about my guest and her history as well in public safety and stories and such. So my guest today is Deborah, and she's a retired 911 professional out of Northern California.
Hello.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to Within the Trenches.
This is so exciting.
I am excited to have you on and just learn more about you and everything. And let's jump right in. So you have probably kind of over 30 years of experience in public safety now, right?
Yes.
And how did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
Well, graduated high school and went into, of all things, fashion merchandising for a year and decided it wasn't what I wanted to do. Sorry, it's just not my gig. So I went
Mhm.
and joined the army. Um, and along the way, I became a military police officer in the National Guard. Um, and to kind of continue that in my civilian life, I found out about dispatching.
Mhm.
And so I applied with Sacramento Police Department back in, oh, good Lord, I'm going to age myself, 1991, 92, and got hired on with them just before the Rodney King riots.
Oh,
So
wow.
my National Guard and my law enforcement kind of coincided there. And so while I was at the academy for Sacramento for to be a dispatcher, I had to go down as a National Guard military police to LA to deal with that situation down there. So that was quite interesting. So it kind of broke up my academy a little bit.
Whoa. Okay, hold on a minute. Okay, let's back up. Let's back up a little bit here as we're getting into your story. Now, that's a completely opposite, from fashion and everything, going into the military, going into the army and everything,
Right.
and then, once you're there, you get into the military police. Now, what was it, um, I guess that kind of really pushed you, inspired you to end up, you know, getting into military police as well?
Well, my family has always been public service.
Mhm,
Cops, and my dad was a correctional officer, um, military. So, public service has always been with the family.
mhm.
So going into the military was kind of a given for me at that point. So I really enjoyed it and liked that public service kind of thing, and being a dispatcher. Well, as I was so being a military police officer, I figured out I didn't want to be on the street, but I wanted to do something. So
Yeah.
that's where the dispatching came in.
Wow, that's okay, so then you end up getting into that, but as you said, the academy was not cut short, but more so postponed a little bit because you ended up having to do other things with
Right.
the
So I did
riots that are
about
going on.
6 weeks of the academy, which it was 2 months long, I believe, 2 or 3
Mhm,
months long. So I did 6 weeks at the academy, went to my National Guard thing, came back, was there for a week. I was still doing okay. I was behind where they were at. So I had to, the rest of my academy was by myself rather than with a class. So they were very accommodating
well, that's
to,
pretty awesome that they gave you that, that they were able to accommodate you that way, but I have to ask, if you're out there during those riots, what was that even like? I remember seeing it all happening on TV. The fact that you're out there in this,
well,
capacity.
so I was, oh my gosh, at that time, so I was what, 23, 24.
Mhm,
That was the scariest thing I have ever been to. I mean, it was when you go down there and having people that are not in, you're trained in the army to go against a foreign country and
mhm.
the bad guys. The bad guys are never your own citizenry. They're- So when you're going down there and people that are Americans that are making threats to you, and I actually did get shot at when I was in Long Beach during that. Um, it's pretty gosh darn scary.
Yeah, I can only imagine that I've never been in a situation like that. I can only imagine what it was like for you, and, wow. So then you go through all of that, right? Which
Right.
is a crazy situation to begin with, and then you end up coming back. You're able
Yes.
to go through the academy and everything, and what happens after that? Like, are you already, like, guaranteed this position, which is why you're going through the academy, or are you
Well,
going through the
it's
academy and then you have to look for a position
so
somewhere?
with it was out here, the department put on its own academy. So they did a mass hiring,
Mhm.
and there were 15 people in our class. And out of those 15 people, only 14 graduated. So did tests every week, and if you didn't pass that test, you were out. And then you went in into the dispatch center, and then began your, I guess, the on the job part. And then after so many weeks or months, um, you went from call taking to radio. And then if you still had to pass that. So you had weekly, every week for like a year, you had these, are you going to be here? Are you not going to be here? It was pretty tough. And I was let go after 11 months. And it was just because I was not fast enough
Mm.
on the radio, which that's fine. And they said that was the only reason. So then after that, after I was let go with Sacramento, I went and worked for a security company for a while just to have a job,
Yeah.
and then started applying at smaller agencies, and then got picked up with El Dorado County in 1994.
And that's where you finished off the rest of your
And
career
that's
then?
where I finished off the rest of my career at.
Wow. So do you feel like, so there's twofold here. So do you feel like your prior experience being in the military and such and MP and everything prepared you for what you were going to be doing for the rest of your career in dispatch, but also on top of that, the second part here, some of the stuff that you saw, whether it be, multiple monitors, radios, and all of that other stuff, were there any differences or anything that surprised you in dispatch compared to what you were doing prior?
Um, yeah. So so dispatching is, when I came on, we only had two monitors,
Mhm.
and they were the green screen DOS yucky monitors.
Yes.
And anybody that is as old as dirt like me knows which ones I'm talking about. And as we so I went from that. Sacramento had two of those, and then when I got to El Dorado, we also had the two with the push button phones. And with El Dorado County, they would have to go down and do backups every month on the computers. So they would actually take the computers down, and we were on cards for
Oh,
half a shift. So yeah, that was fun too.
oh
So
my
I'm
god.
really old school. So
Well,
I
okay,
learned on cards and computers.
you are taking me back because I'll say this. So, I started my dispatching career in 2001, but in, 2004, 2005, I ended up moving back home to Southwest Michigan, and I'm working in the county that I grew up in, Allegan County Central Dispatch, and those monitors, they were flat panel monitors. However, the CAD system that we were using, and for those who are watching and listening that are from the general public, CAD is computer aided dispatch. This is where we type in all the information so that officers end up getting it on their laptops and everybody else in the room can see it as well. So our CAD system was straight up like a DOS type where it was black screen, everything was green, and it was not sophisticated enough to where you could just type in the complaint. You had to memorize every ORI, you had to memorize every
Oh my
incident
gosh.
code, township code, and if you did not have the right incident type, you could not put in that CAD complaint.
Absolutely, yes.
So you had to memorize everything, and just like you, I believe this system was called the AS400 is what we were using at that time, and every night, not just 1 or 2 nights, every single night at 1 in the morning, we'd have to take down the system until 4 AM, and we would be writing everything down, and, oh, man, I remember some of the newer folks that came in. We told them like this goes down and we're gonna have to do it a different way, and they'd say, well, how are we doing it? Then I would hold up a piece of paper and a pencil or pen, and they would go, are you serious? And I would say, unless you're going to memorize every single time and number and unit number and everything for 4 hours, yeah, that's how we do it.
And then when once it comes back up, you have to take all those cards and enter them into
Yes.
the
Oh,
system
right. Yes.
before you could actually start back up using the CAD again.
Right. Yeah. And so before we had gotten our upgrade, our main printer was a dot matrix printer.
Oh God,
So it
yes.
would just be that ring, 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 ring. And what was horrible was, especially if it was summertime. And I remember this like it was yesterday because I feel like I'm traumatized from it because while I was while I was training, it was summertime, and they would, officers or the sheriff's department, whoever agencies would be doing their click it or ticket or their drunk driving
Oh
grants
my
or
gosh, yes.
whichever. And I remember an officer saying, "Go to lean," which was, NCIC. In Michigan, it's called lean. In Indiana, it's IDAX. Like, everybody has their own name
Oh
for
yeah,
that part
yeah.
of it. And, they're like, "Go to lean." I'm like, "Okay." And they said, "We've got a trainee, so just know that it's gonna take a little bit because 'cause we're training him." Well, shit you not, the name that they end up running is a Smith. So it's common, right? Yeah, so the system, the way it was set up, you couldn't run multiple. You would have to do one first, and then
Oh my gosh.
when it was done with the entire cycle, then you could run the next one. So
Oh my
I'm sitting
gosh.
there with the Smith, and it's just coming out and coming out and coming out. And I remember looking at my trainer and I said, "Is this real life? Like, is this we really have to wait for this? It's like
Yeah.
2006. Why are we doing this?" It was crazy. Do you
Oh
That
my gosh,
matrix
yeah.
printer.
Yeah. You'd print up anything and the whole thing would shake. And we had these plastic covers over them to drown out the noise, which it didn't, but you
No.
do your best.
Right, yeah, and I remember the officers would end up coming up on the radio, and they would say, "Central, anything come back yet?" And we have to key up is negative, we're still waiting. You ran a, common name, and we can't run the rest of the people that you're with until this goes through, and they'd go, 10-4 Central. I'm out here with several people. I'm like, "We know, I know. We're just getting through it." So, man, yes, you
Yes.
definitely took me back. So
Oh yeah, yeah, I just the gals nowadays, they just don't believe because they were even not even born then, so they didn't even have exposure at home to this stuff.
Right,
It's all been past 2000. They know nothing but Windows.
right, yes. Oh, man,
So
yeah.
yeah, it takes me back. Oh my gosh, I went on a tour of the CHP dispatch when it was before they got to their new center, and
Mhm.
they had the little treadmills. What are the little things that they put the cards on?
Oh,
Well, they
yeah.
would sit there and put a paperclip on it and attach a match and light the match and send that the conveyor belt and send it down the conveyor belt to the radio. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys, they're terrible,
That's
terrible.
amazing. So
Yeah. So
so you're in there, and there's the 2 monitors and all this stuff that is going on. Was there, once you got into dispatch and you started your training and everything, was there anything that surprised you? Or as you were going through, did you think that this is pretty much how I thought it would be?
I had done sit-alongs and stuff prior just to make sure that's what, but it was quite an amazing, complex little dance that goes on in dispatch. You have your if you're in a large agency, especially, and you have your people taking the calls, and you have people doing the radio, and all the activity that's going on, and it just for somebody as OCD as me, it was a lovely place to be.
Oh, man. Right, yeah, especially if someone takes your favorite pen, damn it.
Yes,
Uh,
gosh darn it.
I know.
I brought my own. I had a pencil box that traveled with me for years that had all of my little accoutrements in it because I didn't want anybody. I wanted to be able to have my things right there.
Yeah. Oh, man. So was there ever a point in the beginning there, though, where you you kind of felt overwhelmed. And the reason why
Oh.
I ask too is because when I had first started and I walked into the central dispatch, when I very, very first started, it was a small police department. It was just
Mhm.
me, 8 hours, and then the next person would come in or whatever. And sometimes an officer would come in to relieve me if I needed to go use the restroom or
Wow.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But in the central dispatch, there was 3 to 4 of us on the floor at a time, and I remember walking in that first day and seeing everyone working like a well-oiled machine,
Mhm.
but also seeing them typing, yelling over to somebody, whatever information, also on the radio for EMS or fire, and eating, like, all at the same time, and I thought, "Damn, am I gonna be able to do this? Like, this
Isn't
is
it
this is crazy."
fabulous, though?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was such a difference, though, going from a large agency to a small rural agency.
Mhm,
So, a large agency, you had maybe 8 people, call takers. You had 4 radio dispatchers just for the law enforcement side. And then on the other side of the room, then you had 3 dispatchers for the fire side because Sacramento dispatches their own fire also.
mhm.
So they're all in the same room. And there wasn't yelling across the room. It was real quiet. Everybody had there was a messaging system so you could message people. So nobody yelled across the room or anything like that. Um, then going to the rural agency where people are yelling across the room, having their lunch at their desks, and everybody's sitting in a horseshoe. There was about 6 total dispatchers that covered Placerville Police, Tahoe Radio, Westlip Radio, and then fire for the whole county.
Mhm.
So there were 4 radio dispatchers and 1 call taker, 1 to 2 call takers. And it was fabulous. And if you worked the middle of the night, there was nothing from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Nothing, nothing. No phones rang. It
Oh,
was
wow.
wonderful.
I you know, I remember some of that. And
And so it wasn't so much overwhelming as I kind of grew with the agency
mhm,
being there, going from we in 1996 they split fire, so we didn't have fire dispatch after 96. And then in 2000 we lost the city police, so we just were our own agency. But was interesting is as those years are going by, the county's growing, so we never, even though we lost those agencies, we didn't lose the amount of phone traffic we were getting. As
oh,
matter of fact, it was growing.
oh,
So it
wow.
was kind of interesting, because it was a lot of where El Dorado County sits is on the east side of Sacramento. And so it's kind of become a rural or the urban sprawl of Sacramento. So there's a lot of development going on up there, which is
Man,
kind of nice. So it,
there's a lot of different things that ended up, that it covers the way things were there. I mean, I guess before I ask this other question, I have to ask this one first. Thinking about you getting in there and seeing everything and working with everything, how did the technology change from the time that you had started to the time that you ended up retiring?
oh my gosh. So I started with um, the the 2 monitors. Our 911 screen was yay big. On the side, and let's see, the phones, the radios. So I went from 9 screens. When I retired, we had 10 screens double stacked.
What?
So our radio and our phones ended up on screens. They had their own. So I had ended up with 3 keyboards, 3 mice, and 10 screens.
Oh my
It
god.
was quite amazing.
Jeez.
My optometrist hated me because I had to we changed in 2019 to the double stack, and I was getting neck pain because I have bifocals.
Mhm.
And so when you're looking like this to see your top screens, you kind of get a strain. So I was forever going in and getting new glasses so that I could read my screens without having all the shoulder and neck pain to go with it.
Oh my god. That okay. That overwhelms me, and
It was
I'm just listening to you talking about it.
it's just it was I I I I don't know how to explain it, but it was quite the amazing change with technology. And you went from not having cell phones. Cell phones were not a thing when I started,
Mhm.
to being able to tell somebody, what blade of grass that they're standing on when they're calling 911 on their cell phone.
A huge change, yes.
The technology, but it was nice to grow with the profession. And it was a great time to be. Now it's just I feel bad for anybody coming in and seeing all of this mess that they have to learn. But then again, these kids are, very well computer savvy by the time
Right.
they get there.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly, and, so let's backtrack a little bit now. Um, the phone calls. Do you remember any of your early phone calls that you took in your
Oh my
career?
gosh, my very first 911 call was a mother that had found her daughter uh, a victim of suicide in the bathroom. And my very first 911 call. And
Whoa.
holy moly, talk about, you know, um, throwing me to the wolves.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Here
exactly, it's
you go.
like, welcome to
So,
dispatch.
yes. So, Sacramento was quite the jump in place at the time. My first Christmas there, well, my only Christmas in Sacramento. Christmas Day, we had a shooting where dad shot his son because dad didn't like the color tie that his son had bought him. I mean, this is holy moly. Yeah.
Wow. I can't even imagine, especially, with you just starting out and everything, but also that one being your very first call that you take. And I mean, there's a lot of people that I can imagine who would hear that and say, I would have left. Like that would have been my only day or whatever. It takes a certain person. It's true. It takes a certain
It,
person to be able to do the
it,
job that we've done.
well, oh gosh, yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, when you think of and also we were started at the time where it was, pardon me, nobody thought about what was going on in your head.
Right.
They didn't really care. It was suck it up and go on, and if you can't suck it up and go on, you don't need to be here. I mean, it was brutal. It was very brutal.
I
But
I remember a few of the folks that I worked with, and they told me the same thing. Like, especially when I started doing everything that I'm doing now, because and some people know this, some people don't, but the whole reason I started everything that I started doing over 10 years ago was because of my own struggles, because nobody was
right,
talking about it, because it was taboo. And
exactly.
I really didn't have anyone to talk to. Like, my family doesn't come from public safety. My wife doesn't come from public safety. And I remember one time, we are hanging out with a bunch of the officers and other dispatchers and stuff, cookouts and everything. And I'm telling all of these funny stories. And on the way home, my wife says to me, well, she kinda slaps me on my arm, she's like, "I can't believe you were telling those stories," and I said, "Oh, were they too, like, messed up, or should I have not said" I mean, they were funny stories, and she goes, "No, no, 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 no," she goes, "That's not what I mean." She goes, "What I mean is you tell me all of the really hard ones. I need you to kinda throw in some funny ones here and there,"
Oh,
and I was like, "Oh, yeah, my bad. I didn't realize," but because nobody wanted to look weak in our
right,
center. Nobody
right.
wanted to ask for help. So when I started writing about it and sharing all of this stuff, it was therapeutic. So I thought,
Absolutely.
if I am sharing and I'm able to get other people to share, maybe it'll help them as well. So backtracking now with some of the people that I had been talking to, they're like, nobody was ever talking about this stuff like you're talking about. we would have to just go from call to call to call and just basically swallow it and continue on. So when you're going through all of this, was there ever any time that you were able to talk to some of your coworkers, or did it just remain taboo for a long time?
With Sacramento, it was very taboo to talk about what you were going through.
Mhm.
Up when we got into the smaller agency, kind of venting about your calls was the thing, you know. Oh my God, and so you kind of vented along the way, and then it became, well, let's not do this anymore because we're turning off the trainees that are coming in
Oh,
by doing this, and it's like, but it's part of the decompression.
right.
It's part of that processing, you know. I mean, yeah, I just listened to a guy get stabbed while he was on the 911 with me, and you know, I think I need to talk about this, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
you know, you have this array of calls, and people find out what I did and they go, oh, that explains why you're like you are.
Oh, yeah, that's like, who is it? Who it's, the Cheshire Cat where he says, "We're all mad here," or something like
Yes,
that, right?
exactly. Yes, I'm
Yes.
crazy and I admit it.
So, I when I had started the I Am 911 movement and was sharing all of these stories and all this other stuff, I remember a few people had said to me, "I don't know if this is a good thing." And I said, "Why?" I said, "It started out as a reclassification issue, but quickly turned into peer support." I said, "All of these people who were sharing these stories,
Hmm.
one that I remember specifically had wrote in their message, 'My hands are still shaking after typing this, but I feel better because I was able to get it out.'" And I was telling them that, and I said, "What is your real beef here? What is your real issue?" And I remember they said, and this goes along with what you were saying about why talking about things stopped, because of recruitment, right? And that's what these people were telling me as well. They were saying, We're going to scare people off, and the short staffing issue is always going to be there." And I said, I said, "I like to think of it this way: I would rather people know exactly what they're getting into than you take them through the entire training and not let them know, or not let them listen
Oh,
to calls, and then they take that first
exactly.
call, freeze, and then they leave."
Exactly. I had a trainee once that um, we did a 2 week orientation, which was part of their training, where you go through and do all your manuals and stuff and go through that. And then he did 6 weeks of call taking. And at the end, goes, I don't think I belong here. There's too much computer work. And I go, and we couldn't have figured this out 2 months
Right. It's a lot of wasted manpower.
ago? What the heck?
Yeah,
Yeah. He did not realize that there was so much. I mean, in that time, that was when we only had 4 screens. I had two CAD screens, a phone, and a radio. You know, that was before our big, it's like,
right.
are you kidding me? Wow. You know, you gotta,
That is interesting. Yeah. So, and so going back, that's why I feel like it's better to let people know what it
oh
is that
my
they're
gosh.
getting into, because, man, there were a few times that I remember that we were so short-staffed,
Oh
nobody
my
was
gosh.
getting time off. No time off, no vacation time, there it was nothing. It was a whole year that no one got
Wow.
anything. It was the only time that the county allowed us to roll over our PTO time because no one could take any time off. We had about 10 people that we brought in all at once.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone was considered a CTO, a trainer, because we needed to push them through.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I remember a couple of them were related to some of the deputies, and because of that, those folks felt as though they were gonna be able to go right through because they have family
Mhm.
in law enforcement and in
Mhm.
public safety, and they knew what they were getting into. However, once it got to the phone calls, they were done. They're like, "No,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
And
this isn't for me."
between you and me, cops' wives as dispatchers are the worst.
Oh.
Just saying.
It's it's definitely an interesting dynamic, and I remember working with a few, and I would ask them, I would say, "How do you do this?" And they would say, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "Your husband is out there right now. We're under code 7," which for us, code 7 was for
Uh,
emergency traffic only,
oh, see,
and
ours is eating. So you say code 7, I'm like,
oh,
"Oh, he's at dinner?"
yeah, yeah, no. Yeah, no, for us, if, they had someone it was a felony traffic stop
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever, they would yell out code 7. So we would do a tone, and we would say, "Elegant Central to all stations and units, we are under
Oh,
code
yeah,
7
yeah, yeah.
until so and so, advises everybody else go to secondary," or something like that. So, there's only emergency traffic going on, right? And I would say, "How are you doing this right now? You know that your loved one is out there." And I remember they would say to me, "I have trust in him and his training that he is good to go, but also that everybody else that's out there with him or her, however,
Now,
whichever."
see, that's an awesome wife, but she was a dispatcher before she married the cop. It's the ones that come
Oh,
in that are already married to the cop. Let me make that clear. The ones that come in and go, "Oh, husband so and so, and I'm going to be a dispatcher," and yeah, okay, bye, honey. Not this ain't gonna work.
yeah. And those are the folks, like I'm saying, are the ones that I feel like they need to fully understand what they're
Oh
getting
gosh, yeah.
into, which is
Yes.
why, like, a sit along is perfect.
Oh my
However, well,
gosh.
okay, hold on. Let me say that again. I can't say that it's perfect only because there's a lot of times that people will go in for a sit along and nothing happens.
Isn't that right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. They either get nothing or the whole world explodes and you have to say, "I'm sorry, sweetie, but we got to get you out of here because what's going to happen now is going to turn you off to this."
Yeah, yeah, but sometimes they stay, right? And
Oh yeah.
those are the people, at least in my opinion, that I feel those are the right candidates, right?
Yes.
Because they're the
The
ones
ones
who
that
want to
survive it.
be there. Yes, they wanna be there. They're asking questions. There's a lot of times people would stay for 4 to 5 hours, and I would say, "Weren't you supposed to be here only for 2 hours?" And they would say, "Yeah, but I really wanna take this
Yeah,
in," and
that's
I'd be like, "They're gonna make it."
and yeah, I did a sit along at El Dorado before I applied there, and they were shocked that I had that experience and that I was really interested and I was asking the right questions, and it was more like their CAD functions because the CADs were very similar, which really helped my transition. So
Mhm.
I had to learn a new CAD, but I had to learn it just tweaking a little bit. So instead of putting a period here, and it was command line. I don't know if you remember command line.
Oh, yes.
So
I
it was all
loved it.
command line. So I went from putting in commas in between the stuff to periods in between the stuff. So, it was just that a little nuances with the CAD system. So that was nice. But yeah, if somebody comes in and they just sit and they want to gossip, it's like no, they're not going to make it. But if they're sitting there paying attention and really listening to what's going on, that person's going to make it through.
Oh, for sure. Now, looking back at your career and everything, well, let me ask this first. In El Dorado, um, did you do all 3? Did you do all disciplines like law enforcement, fire, and EMS?
So
Or
when I first got there, we had all fire. We had fire with us, um, and unbeknownst to me, because as a professional communicator, we should communicate with our employees. Um, um, Sorry, was that sarcastic? So
No, not at all. It's
I
just
came in
dripping.
and I trained on all the law enforcement, and then was told, "Oh yeah, you're going to learn EMD now and go to fire." Well, luckily, fire split right at that time, and they took all their people with them, and I didn't have to do that. So
That's awesome. Well,
by
the
the
reason
skin of my teeth.
the reason I ask is I was gonna ask you, what was your, like favorite position to work? Like, were you more of
Oh,
phones or were you more
no,
radios?
I loved radio, and the busy channel, the busier the better. I really enjoyed that. It was it was a lot of fun. There was some nights though, and um, so we would only have, oh gosh, we would only have 3 of us. So we were doing double duty, call taking and radio. But the gals that were with me were, close to retirement, and they'd be sleeping. So I'd pull up, I'd be doing all 3 radio channels during the middle of the night.
Oh, man. I mean, it sounds like you were rocking it though, so that's good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was just it funny, you'd hear something and it's like somebody's calling. It's like, oh, but I better answer that for her. Look over and they're snoring. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
When
you know
when you could get away with that at a small agency, you can't anymore. That's just yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I remember, I remember when I was working in dispatch, I always worked midnight shift. There were some shifts that, they
Oh,
would overlap or I would volunteer for, a morning shift. But when I got promoted to supervisor for, I think it was 3 or 4, actually it might have been 6 months. I don't know. I don't remember now how long the shifts, the rotation would last, but there was one stint of just straight mornings that I worked,
oh
which I
god.
hated. I loved midnights. Midnights was my thing.
Yes.
However, there were a few times where I would be sitting there would be nothing going on, and I would feel myself go forward, and I'd be like, "Okay, it's time to get up and walk around." Well,
Absolutely.
what I would do though is I would go into the bathroom that was inside of dispatch there because we had one inside the dispatch room, and then down the hall we had like our
Oh
locker
yeah.
rooms and stuff. But
Mhm.
I would go into the bathroom that's right there in the center, and as soon as the door shut, I would turn on the fan and I would just press my head against the wall and close my eyes for like 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and then open them and be like, "Okay, all
Yeah,
right, we're
yeah.
good to
Now let's
go."
go.
Yeah, put water on my face, and I'm like, "Yes, all right, let's do this."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, that that takes me back because, there would be times where there would be nothing going on for about
Oh
3 or
yeah.
4 hours. It was usually winter time
Yes.
when because where I was at, we weren't far from Lake Michigan, so we would get tons of those, like, fat snowflakes, like the lake effect snow,
Yeah.
blizzard style sometimes, and sometimes the public would actually listen to the news and they would not go out on the road. So we would just be sitting there just waiting.
You
But
know there's somebody. Well, we had so we went from the Central Valley up to the Nevada border.
Mhm.
So we had part of the Sierras in our jurisdiction. So yeah, it got, we did search and rescues and stuff, and if it snowed, we had one road that would close every winter and never failed. Nobody would read the signs, nobody would look, and we would get somebody stuck out in the snow out in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, have to go get them.
Jeez.
Yes,
Okay.
I love winter.
So here's a question based off of that. Thinking about the technology change, what was that like when someone would get lost and you're trying to find them
Oh my
compared to
gosh.
like, you know, towards the end of your career when, like you were saying, you can see what blade of grass, they're
Right,
standing
right.
on.
So you know when you give directions and you're in a rural county, it's not left at this street and right at this street, and maybe you have like a fast food place for a landmark. No, it's turn right at that big rock,
Bob's
continue
Rock.
on until it turns into a dirt road, and then when it wise at the oak tree,
Oh man.
and and look for the mailbox with the flower on it. And I mean, oh my god, that was such a change for me, going from, because I was city girl. We called them flatlanders.
Uh-huh.
Because we were living in the flats of the Central Valley, and I'm going up to the mountains, and oh my gosh, it was quite the culture shock. But
My lord.
so you're going and you're asking these people, okay, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you're trying to get landmarks and and you pull out the Forest Service map and you got it over your thing trying to find them, and
Oh,
oh my gosh,
geez.
it was we
Looking at
had
letters and numbers to match where they're at and the
exactly. I
grid.
had we got a call from Fish and Wildlife one night, and one of their officers had been out on stakeout for poachers and had gotten shot, and didn't he only gave like a specific landmark of where he was at, and they knew an area. Luckily we found him because I had pulled up, we'd just gotten Google Maps at that time, so I was able to look at Google Maps for the landmarks that he was at, and we actually found him, but it still took us 2 hours to get out there to him. It was
Jeez.
quite the undertaking.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people who, are in the profession now don't know what it was like before,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and
And then being able to do ride-alongs also, going out and seeing these places
oh, yeah,
and
the geo
seeing
rides,
them
yeah.
during whatever your shift hours were. So if you worked graveyard, going out there and seeing what these places look like at night so you can envision what you need to tell the deputies as far as directions and whatnot was quite that was always fun.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I would tell some of the newer folks that would come on. I would tell them, you know, I know that you have your own life, right? Of course. But if you ever get a chance, do a geo ride, a geography ride.
Oh
Go
yeah.
around, one of the spots in the county that I worked in, there was a spot that was called Water Tower Hill, and it's literally a hill with a water tower
The
on
water
it.
tower.
Yeah, but there are different landmarks and everything around that specific
Oh,
spot. So we would tell people, make that one of the spots that you go to so that you can see what it looks like. So if somebody calls and let's say they're calling from, one of the NSI phones, the non-service initialized phones where it's just they can only call 911. It doesn't always have a location that comes with it.
oh, absolutely.
If
Yeah.
they are in that area and they say, "I'm on Water Tower Hill by whatever," you know exactly what it looks like.
Mhm.
That stuff is invaluable to be able
Yeah, we
to
used to
have
have like
that.
a checklist so
Mhm.
you could for our different zones, and you'd take with the trainees and you'd send them out with the checklist and say, "Okay, have them take you to all these little spots." So you can see when, people refer to whatever bar is out in that
Yeah.
zone, and so and we had in our CAD system we had common names. So if somebody said that bar, you could type it just the name of the bar in and the address would pop up, which was kind of nice.
Those things are always good, especially with the technology, how fast it started moving as well, because
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure it's the same for you, but also for me, thinking about what it was like before that the technology boost and not being able to find some of those
Oh
folks,
my
like
gosh.
those are the calls that kind of haunt me where it's like, I don't know whatever happened to that person.
I think a couple of um and this is going to sound very macabre, and I apologize, but we all have a dark sense of humor.
Right. Yeah.
Some of these these people that get lost in the mountains, and off the cuff I would say, "Oh, we'll find them at spring thaw." You know,
Right. Yeah.
when somebody, if they're lost on a hiking trail and we can't find them, well, we'll find it when the snow thaws because somebody will find them. I
Right.
mean, it's very macabre, but, sometimes it's the truth and,
It's
unfortunately.
it's very much the truth. I remember having similar conversations with, like, my siblings, and they would just, like, stare at me, and I would go, "What? What did I say?" And they're like, "Dude, how cold can you be?" I'm like, "No, you don't understand.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
this is the shit that happens, and if I don't have kind of a dark sense of humor about this, I mean, in any profession, there's a dark sense of humor about stuff,
Yeah,
and
they
if you don't, I mean, I would spend more time crying than I would be laughing.
Oh,
And
exactly. I would talk to my lieutenants, giving them an update of what's going on if we had an incident, and and he goes, "You're in such a good mood about it." And I go, "Would you rather me be in tears telling you this?" I said, "You
right.
know, which one, which Debbie do you want?"
Yeah. Yeah. You can actually use the Debbie Downer type, do you
Well,
want
yeah.
the
I
Debbie
mean, do you
Downer
really?
or
Hi, I'm going to be a Debbie Downer today.
oh man. No, but also, that's something that people don't always understand, which is why, even now, I've been out of dispatch now for 9 years. And I will go get my hair cut and someone will ask me what I do for a living and I'll say what I do and they'll say, "Well, were you a dispatcher before?" And then I'll stop for a moment and like, yeah, I'll just tell them like, "Yes, I was." And they'll say, "Well, what was your, like, worst call or what was
Oh
your
my God, I
craziest
hate that
call?"
question.
Right, yeah, and I did as well for the longest time, but then I thought, these people, they're curious, Humans are generally curious, that's what it is, they're curious, so when I started doing everything that I was doing, I switched my mindset and decided to use it as public education. Now, that's not saying that I didn't tell people those crazy calls because I did. There were a few times where I said a crazy call and they're just kind of standing there staring at me, we're making eye contact in the mirror and I'd say, "What?" And they'd go, I guess that's just not what I expected." And I said, "Oh, you meant outrageous, not crazy. You meant outrageous like someone walking naked on stilts, right? Not what I just told you." And they're like, "Yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting." I was like, "Sorry."
Oh, no, 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 no. Yeah, the job that I work at now, which is such 180 from what I was doing
Yeah.
before. I am a receptionist at an HOA for a 55 plus community. And I go in and I talk to old people all weekend. It's wonderful. And there's been a couple people that have asked, what's your worst call?" And I just lay it right out for them, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And the shock on their face, and they just kind of turn around and walk off.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Because my worst call was what eventually led to my retirement. So yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was
It's it's an interesting thing, right? Because you've got people who are super curious and they want to know certain things, and then when you tell them,
they don't want to know
yeah,
anymore.
they're like, "Dude, why did you tell me that?" I'm like, "You asked me, and
Yeah,
I wanted to tell you."
yeah. Even when I was job hunting this last year, um, I went on a couple of interviews, and I told them, "This is what you're getting. This is me. I'm not on my best behavior. I am showing you what I am going to be, and I am flipping crazy." And why this woman hired me, I don't know, but she has been the best boss ever. So,
I'm sure it's because you, for one, you can not only handle yourself on the phone with all types of calls, but that translates into seeing people face to face. Because before, and of course, only if you feel comfortable talking about what happened in 2019, before, we kind of get to that. And now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. um, yeah, I don't know. I can't think of what it was that I was going to say now, but,
yeah, I,
uh,
I I do well, and the landscaper that I have to work with, that works for the HOA, has found out the hard way that you don't mess with dispatchers.
right.
You
Yes,
know,
because I
yeah,
remember now.
I'm very, you know, I tell my boss, you can watch me, and you will show I will flip into dispatcher mode,
Yes,
and it's right there.
and
And yeah, he
and
was
you
not
you
happy
saying
when he
that
had to deal with Debbie dispatcher rather than Debbie receptionist.
and you saying that, you reminded me of what I was gonna ask you to begin with. How has the job changed you?
Oh my gosh, I used to be the innocent little naive, holy moly, didn't cuss, didn't drink. Oh no, 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 no. Yeah, I've changed quite a bit. The job really um well, I've been diagnosed with what do they call it? Complex PTSD. So that 30 years of boom, 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 boom,
Mhm.
and ending up with an incident. But I'm very blunt and to the point, and I am out here being loud and proud that I'm crazy, and I want to make sure that agencies know that this can happen to people,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
We've got to that's my thing now is I want to make sure that agencies are aware that this kind of thing happens to dispatchers. We're not the little secretaries that they think we are. We have to deal with all of these calls, and we're getting these injuries. So, I think maybe going from naive to an activist is what it did for me.
Nice. Yeah, and I asked that too because, um, there are a lot of things that I went through that also changed me that still sticks with me. Again, like I said, I've
Oh
been out
gosh, yeah.
of dispatch for 9 years. However, I dip back into dispatch mode in conversations with people sometimes,
Oh
or
gosh, yeah.
if I'm at a store or something and, I'm asking a question and someone is, like, kinda getting in my face with a response, I keep that calm demeanor. I'm using my words. Really, I'm running circles around the person with my words because you have to admit, a lot of us in this profession, or all of us in this profession, we have the gift of speech and the fact that we have to think on our feet
Oh gosh, yeah.
and make these quick decisions. So you've got all of this combination, man, you don't want to get in a debate with one of us.
My coworkers are always like, "How did you know how to do that?" And I go, "Oh, honey, I'm 5 steps ahead of whatever's happening."
Yes, it's always a game of chess.
It's just I'm already, I'm already at point Z when you're still at point B.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And
So
trying to loop back around.
exactly. And then going for the other universes.
For sure. Yeah, and dispatch ear. I
Yeah.
still have my dispatch ear. I will be out with friends or whatever, and they're talking, and as they're talking, I'm also listening to, like, all
Yes.
the other conversations, and I remember, like, one time, someone asked me one of my friends asked me, and she goes, "Are you listening to other conversations right now?" And I'll start laughing, and I'll say, "You won't believe what happened to that person over there." It's pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. My
It's
my dispatcher ear is not as good as it used to be because tinnitus. So having having people scream in your headset is not a good thing. But my husband will sit and just shake his head and watch me in the evenings. I'll have the TV on. I have my iPad going, and I'm carrying on a conversation on my phone,
yeah, the
and can
multitasking
tell
doesn't go
him
away.
what's going on in each exact one.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I am right there with you. Yeah, the job definitely, changes us and
Yeah,
everything.
I think
Now,
it created the OCD in me. I don't think it was there before. I think it just uh, throughout the years it created it.
there's a lot of things that happen, right? Like, for
Oh
for
gosh, yeah.
example, I didn't have high blood pressure before I started working in dispatch. Like, that
Oh my
developed while
gosh.
I was in dispatch, and I remember going to the doctor, and my doctor says to me, "Ricardo, you need to kind of you need to figure out how to be
You need
less
to calm
stressed when
down.
you're at yeah, you need to calm down, figure out how to be less stressed when you're at work." And I said, Do you have I ever told you what I do for a living?" And he goes, "Yeah, you know what? No, I don't know." He goes, What do you do? What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a 911 dispatcher." And he goes, "Oh, Well, I guess you can't be less stressed then.
Here, let me write you a prescription. Okay.
Right.
So funny thing. So I was born with a congenital heart defect
Mhm.
that they thought was one thing. And so in 2015, I go in for a routine physical just
Uh-huh.
because, and found out that I had a what is it? A unicusp aortic valve. So where you have three, I have one. The three
Whoa.
little leaves on there. I have had one, and it was in what they call severe stenosis. So usually the opening is 1 inch. Mine was 1/4 square inch when they finally found it. I was about 2 months from dying and went in for open heart surgery to get that fixed and came back to work as a dispatcher.
Oh, man.
So yeah,
That's
you want to
dedication.
talk about my doctor was so happy when I retired.
I bet. Oh, man. So how long in between from when that happened to when you retired? Like, how much time was there?
Um, so I so I had my open heart surgery in 2015. My incident happened in 2019. I lasted a year in dispatch before the psychiatrist said, no, you are done."
Yeah.
And then I retired. So that was October 2020, and I retired in June of 2021.
Wow.
That went quick. My last 2 years went very quick.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, the fact that you went back and
I know,
wow.
I was
Again, the
crazy. Can you
dedication,
bel
man.
Yeah. So I've been in therapy since 2015 because there's I have what's called post-perfusion syndrome,
Mhm.
which they call pump head. It's from being on the heart-lung machine during the open heart surgery.
Oh,
So
okay.
it causes like depression and
Mhm.
memory issues and things like that. So I've been in therapy since then. So, luckily that helped when I had my incident. So,
So, if you don't mind me asking, and of course, like I said, if you feel comfortable talking about it, you've mentioned this incident in 2019 a few times. What was it that happened that eventually, you ended up going into retirement?
um so as dispatchers, we have all been in officer involved shootings,
Mhm.
and they're stressful enough. This officer involved shooting was different, where my deputy died. He was shot and killed by somebody who ambushed him out in the field. And that was the first time, and I'm the type of person everybody goes home.
Right.
And that was the first time that I was unable to send my person home. And so, as a good person that has therapy, I did call. I immediately went, into emergency therapy after the incident. But COVID hit right after. So you're taking a person who's had a extremely traumatic incident happen to them, and now you're going to sit them in a little room on their time off and not allow them outside because there's this, you know, disease going on outside. That So basically I was stuck inside in my own head and had a very unsupportive supervisor at the time that micromanaged me into oblivion.
Jeez.
So when I had another supervisor who was taking a psychologist classes, and finally realized what was happening with me, pulled me into an office, gave me a stack of papers for workman's comp, and said, "I'm locking you in here until these are all filled out and you've called and started your workman's comp process."
Oh, man.
She saved my life.
It's it's always good to have that support system, right? And it's sad though that there are a lot of places that still don't have um that type of support, or just anybody to be able to notice that something is wrong, because
Oh,
what
exactly.
is a lot of times people are caught up in their own thing that,
Right.
people don't notice. We could be walking around and you would think everybody is fine, but you don't know what people
Oh,
are
exactly.
battling, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I she literally saved my life. I mean, she doesn't realize how, I mean, I was that close. And before my incident happened, things weren't all rainbows and butterflies at that department, and I was in the process of possibly finding another job with another department.
Mhm.
But when traumatic events happen, they tell you, don't don't make big, huge, life-changing decisions until you've kind of healed and processed that incident out. And so I gave up going to another department, and yeah.
Wow.
So
I
it's been quite the journey through PTSD and CPTSD and retirement, and it's been quite a journey. And I'm at that point now where I want to just get out there and tell people, take care of yourselves. Get out there. Therapy is nothing to be ashamed of. Even if you're just starting out, get somebody to talk to, because that's going to change. The difference between my first officer involved shooting and my last officer involved shooting, even though it resulted in a death on that last one, the first one, we were told to suck it up. We don't need to know what's going on. We don't need to know the outcome of the if the officer's okay. I drove home crying and unable to see the road because I didn't know if that officer was alive or dead until the next day. Now they pull you off the radio, they get you into a room and they start talking with you, which is wonderful,
Mhm.
but we're still not quite there yet.
Right.
There's still a stigma.
And
And,
that's
and
and that's why I think conversations like this that we're having right now are so important,
oh
so
my
that
gosh,
so
yes.
that people know that it is okay, for one, not to be okay, and two, that it's okay to reach out, because there's more courage in asking for help than not. We always, before, had that mindset of, man, I don't want anybody to think I'm weak. I don't want them to think I
Oh,
can't hack it. But that was all bullshit. It's
yeah.
more brave in
I mean,
sharing and
I would
asking.
much rather have somebody that's able to deal with this healthy
Yeah.
than have an intervention and go, something's wrong with you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's
It
and we're losing too many cops because of it. There's the statistics of cop suicide right now is not funny. And even
right.
dispatcher suicide, there is a few of those too.
There's yeah, there and a lot of things that I see on social media, like some of the private dispatch groups, excuse me. I remember one of the things that I saw, it was probably about a month or so ago. Someone had posted in a group, and they just simply said, "Hey guys, I went into dispatch today and spoke to my deputy director and or no, my supervisor, and told them I'm done. I can't do this anymore." And the way they were talking, it was people were not, or the higher ups, I guess, they didn't really recognize what it was that their people were going through. And all I could think was, what if a part, not all of it, but a part of solving this short staffing issue is if people would just talk to each other. Maybe that person who's put that message out there and said that they were done, maybe all they needed was for someone to say, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Exactly.
What if?
Exactly. Yes, we're paid communicators, but we don't communicate within ourselves,
Right.
amongst ourselves.
Yes.
Nobody allows us that venting. Nobody, if somebody's having a bad day, oh, we're sorry, but here, work the busy channel and go home in tears.
Right, yeah.
Not what we need to be doing.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, exactly.
We need to be the kinder, gentler dispatch and not the hard asses of days gone by.
Right, yeah, and it's definitely a new day, right? It's a new
Yes,
day where people are actually talking, they're reaching
yes.
out for help,
And
they're
it's
getting that help.
absolutely wonderful what's out there if people allow themselves to go out there and look.
Exactly.
There's lots of places. I've been to a trauma retreat, which was absolutely wonderful and made some fabulous friends while I was there, and
Mhm.
that, oh my gosh, you're going through the same thing I am. Holy crap.
Right, and
Who knew?
how much comfort, does that give to know that there are others out there, that you're not alone?
It's wonderful. I just read a book this week called Facing Evil, written by a deputy from Sacramento County regarding
Mhm.
his officer involved shooting incident where his partner was killed. And he walked through his whole incident. And oh my gosh, I had a box of Kleenex sitting next to me because I was like, "Oh my god, who knew?" You don't hear that side of what's going on, the mental part of, the survivor's guilt and the shoulda coulda wouldas and all of that. And I went, "My god, he's just like me. This is wonderful."
Right, yeah, yeah,
Holy crap.
those
So I cried through the entire book and I read the whole book yesterday and it was, oh my gosh, it was absolutely wonderful, you
wow,
know.
that is amazing, it has been amazing to have you on and to share your story and to learn more about you, and I could talk for you for hours, man. It was we could have been coworkers. Shit, like
Oh
this
my gosh,
is this
yeah,
has been
it's just,
great.
and
Um,
I just I want people to speak up. If you're being abused, if you're having a bad day, you have a bad supervisor, speak up. Your
right,
mental health is important.
exactly. And as we go into the wrap up of this episode, which again has been phenomenal to have you on, I have one last question for you, and that
Oh
is,
God.
yeah, if you could go back in time with all the knowledge that you have now and experience and speak to yourself at the very beginning, what advice would you give yourself?
Run fast, run the other direction. Actually, no. I am who I am because of my experiences. And I
Yeah,
don't think even knowing, I tell people that are like, "Oh, I didn't think I made that much of an impact on you." And it's like all of these experiences and all of these mistakes that I have made and the the wins and the losses, I wouldn't be who I am now without all of it. And had I known about any of it when I was younger, I wouldn't be the same person and not have this passion that I have now to help people still, maybe in a
perfect.
different way.
Yes, awesome. Oh, thank you for the job that you did for so long, for the outreach, the way that you are sharing this, and being an advocate for mental health and wellness, having wanting to make sure to share your story so that other
Oh
people
gosh, yeah.
will learn from you as well. So thank you so much for all of
Oh,
this.
thank you for having me. This was fun.
This has been great. I will be right back here with you in just one moment.
Okay.
And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us. And that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is at 91 Podcast. You can like us on Facebook, and that is facebook.com/within the trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services. And again, shout out to Facebook subscribers as well as patrons of the podcast. If you want to become either one of those on Facebook, you can check us out. That's facebook.com/within the trenches podcast/support. And then if you want to be a patron of the podcast, that is patreon.com/WTT podcast. Both of them awesome bonus content. You get bonus episodes as well as weekly episodes that are going to be early for you before everybody else. There's swag, discounts, t-shirts, all kinds of different things Make sure to check it out. And I thank you for supporting the podcast there. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn Live and Twitter. I think that was all of them. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.